Technical School, that is, and she's a social studies teacher there, and she has been selected. Emily Bowen Drake has gone to the SpaceX launch down in NASA. One of 30 people out of 1,000. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well, thanks.
So let's go back to, because this is not the first time you've been there. So tell us about this initial affiliation with NASA. How did this all come about?
This began actually in the fall of 2014. I was covering the scientific revolution with my students, and we were following some scientific-related content on Twitter. So we were following NASA as we were learning about Galileo. And there was an application NASA sent for NASA Social. Come watch our SMAP launch in Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And the criteria was you needed to have a large social media presence because NASA wants to find other ways to get the word out amongst the public. And at that time, I had about 200 Twitter followers. They were just, things related for school. And I was like, guys, they're not going to take me. I don't have a large social media presence. And my students put me in my place and they say, that's not how you talk to us. You tell us to go for it, dream big, and you never know what happens. So I put in my application. I don't have a large social media presence, but I teach over 100 students, and you put all their social media together, if they get the word out, it could be a large presence. And I'm a social studies teacher, and why would I go to a launch? Why would I go to a launch in California? But I explained how we were learning about the scientific revolution and trying to make my connections. And lo and behold, I was accepted. So I did go out to see the Soil Moisture Active Passive satellite get launched. And ever since then, it's become a large part of our day-to-day classes, covering things that are going on with NASA and SpaceX and
history in the making.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Okay. And your students had to have been so proud of you to see you go out there initially and then even to have these follow-ups.
Oh, definitely. They were impressed. They make fun of me and, elevate my rock star status more than I deserve. But, while I'm out there, I'm tweeting with them, I'm Skyping with them, I'm on Snapchat with them, and then when I come back, we make little YouTube videos and blogs for them. So to keep them part of the process, they're excited that I'm going there, but they're part of the journey as well.
Now, was Facebook Live part of this most recent one that you went on?
I didn't use Facebook Live, though I do use social media a lot. With my classes, I've still kept... I haven't found an appropriate way to incorporate Facebook into it just yet. I know some teachers do, but I sort of stick to the ones where I know I can sort of, use it within the right parameters in the classroom.
And how are they doing as far as receiving this and then it, turning around into information for them?
It's pretty neat. So sometimes they're just tweeting me questions. So, for example, when I was there in Florida and they saw where I was at, they could just tweet a question and I could, ask the rocket scientist or whoever I was talking to and get back to them right away. Or sometimes, it becomes part of a wrap-up lesson and, we'll blog about it, talk about it. And, more than that, it just becomes part of our day-to-day chat and day-to-day incorporated into whatever we're learning about and how it relates to everything.
And that's the thing. It's the relativity. You're a teacher. You're a social studies teacher going to NASA, going down to Cape Canaveral in Florida and doing these things and then bringing them back to the students and really showing them that it's just, every individual has this opportunity.
Correct.
This possibility.
Yeah, I'm a social studies teacher. I think it's amazing what rocket scientists and engineers and astronauts can do, and they're impressed by it, but there's so much more than just those people who are involved with it, and to learn that even if you're a history or an English person, that they have a role to play in this as well. And when I ask these, NASA directors, the director of the Earth Science missions and all these bigwigs, so to speak, how it relates to history, they're always so impressed because they're used to the technical questions about launch payloads and thrust and this and that, but they're so happy to show the big picture, how if we broaden how we look at it, how to see how it's all interconnected.
I grew up in the 60s, and my view on all of this was such a tunnel vision wherever that camera was planted, wherever, that's all you saw. But your view, because of your ability to tour so much of their facility, is a much broader one.
Correct. When I get back, everyone asks me about the launch. Or, for example, when I went to my first launch, it was actually scrubbed, and they had to push it back a few days, so I didn't see it. And everyone was like, well, you didn't get to see the launch. What a waste. And I was like, you know what? The launch is just such a small part of it. I was in the mission control rooms. I've met astronauts and directors. This past time, I was at the ISS building and saw where they're making plants that they grow on the ISS and also where they're growing crops that they plan to grow on Mars someday. which is just like mind-blowing to think that, it's real when you see them growing plants that they want to grow on Mars.
What's special about those plants? How will that work?
Well, a lot of it had to do with the lighting, because the lighting will be different on Mars. Also, a lot of it was the soil. So they brought back, since we've had rovers there and stuff, some small samples. So it's not actual Mars soil, but like
they can simulate it.
Exactly. And when you see they're trying to grow these plants in these, in this fake soil, so to speak, because they know when people go there, they have to grow their own crops. They can't bring up enough food with them forever. And that's, I saw the SLS launch, or the test firing, in Utah, where they tested the booster to go to Mars. And so you're like, yeah, we're going to Mars. But when you see them growing the plants, to get there, then it's like, they're not kidding. It
becomes real.
Exactly. So to see all these other components, to see Boeing building their Starliner spacecraft so that these commercial enterprises can go to space as well. You see all these other aspects. We met the seamstress who made parts of the space shuttle. And you saw wow, there's so much more involved than just the launch.
Wait. When you mentioned, and you did when we talked about this, you mentioned that there was even a seamstress that you met.
Correct.
I assumed it was building the suits that the astronauts wear.
Yeah, I never had such an idea that of all the different ways people were involved with the space shuttle and other parts of, the NASA enterprise. So one woman we met was named Jane Wright, and she was a group of sewers and quilters that literally made parts for the space shuttle. Whenever I looked at the space shuttle, I just thought it was big hunks of metal, never realizing that so much of it was fabric. And of course, it's, special fabric that had to be tested to withstand, over 3,000 degrees, but you still need women or men, but it was, right, who were there to sew these parts. And she also, they sewed parts of the parachutes for when the shuttle landed, and now for when the Orion spacecraft, they do that. And they're so proud. They had an essential part for space flight. And, it really brought into my idea of just all these people and all the different roles they played. And, when my mom taught me how to sew, wouldn't it be amazing if, besides, stitching your pants, you can also take this skill to help people go to outer space.
Wow. No, it would never be something that I would apply to, but it certainly can.
Exactly.
And you said that, and of course, when we do think of it, I do think in terms of all the technical stuff, the scientists, the mathematicians, the technology that is involved in this, but there's such a far-reaching farming even, as you're mentioning.
Exactly, which is something, amazing that I bring back to my classes as well, that it doesn't matter what you do. If you have a skill and a passion, it probably applies to space exploration somehow. And, if that's something you want to be part of someday, that's something that you can do.
So much of teaching and schoolwork now is critical thinking. It's based on critical thinking, as opposed to rote, which I was raised on. Are you seeing this as being effective for a situation such as NASA?
Oh, definitely. When we cover the age of exploration, and you're learning about Columbus and all these explorers, things you've learned about since you were, in kindergarten. But now we're taking it to different levels. And how does that apply to us now going to outer space, going to Mars? And we actually, besides just me going to launches, we follow a lot of the stuff that NASA does live on NASA TV. And we'll tweet them and they'll respond to us, which is amazing. And the head of Kennedy Space Center actually was a former astronaut, and he was giving a speech on exploration versus pioneering. And that's huge critical thinking. And something we never thought of was this person an explorer or a pioneer? And what's the difference? And when we go to space, what's the difference? Are we exploring? Are we pioneering? Is it both? So just the different things they use in their brain, the different ways they have to process this information, it's amazing. And even when I saw that SLN test firing, I asked Bill Gestire, who was the assistant director of exploration of people going into space. And we asked him about, we were studying the age of imperialism. All these countries are competing to go to Mars, and he talked about countries working together. So all these different big concepts that we learn about in school, we apply this critical thought to it and evaluate it. And it's, like you said, it's just more than the technical stuff. It's all this big picture concepts to think through.
It's really cultural.
Definitely.
Yeah. And something that I think has really been off the radar for a very long time. So you're seeing more of it now.
Yes.
I guess with the advent of the possibility of people traveling and this becoming a more commercial thing.
Correct. Because when I began incorporating this stuff into my classroom, I didn't realize how little students really were exposed to studying the space. So we grew up watching the space shuttles, and then I guess after Challenger, people were sort of scared to show their students, where they didn't want to turn it on in classroom and possibly see a tragedy. And the students we had now, they never really saw rockets launched or all these amazing things. And
satellites, rockets, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now when they see it, for us, we just sort of think, oh, it's another one going off, but it's brand new to them, to many students. And, it's very exciting for them to see that as well. So there's so many things going on just watching a spacewalk while we're doing our class, having that in the background, and realizing that it's history in the making and that there's sort of a passion turned on to them about that.
It's a beautiful thing, really.
Yes.
Yeah, it's helping them to understand that this is the reality and it's their reality.
Exactly.
So, because they're seeing so much, obviously on television and everything else, every electronic device that we have has this alternate reality, but They need to really invest themselves in what is going on.
Correct. Yeah, this is what's going to happen. They're going to see someone on Mars in the near future.
Excellent. We're going to take a break here. When we return, we're going to continue talking we have a social studies teacher from Morris County School of Technology joining us this morning, Emily Bone, and she's here to talk about her NASA experiences. I hope you will stay with us.
Joyce Esty will return with her guests on Newsline after this on Northwest Jersey's own RNJ.